Welcome, and thanks for tuning in to An Acquired Chef's YouTube channel. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can stay tuned for more culinary innovations coming your way. So we've got a very simple recipe today. I like it because it's just, you go to the grocery store, you get a tin or a can of condensed milk, a can of evaporated milk, and just a little container of double cream. And so, you get those quite literally, and I'll show that to you in a minute, in the way that they come, like just in the store, get them, empty them into a pan, and you're ready to go. And that's kind of like why I tweaked this recipe so that it was simple to make that way. Then we've got a little bit of cardamom powder, some saffron as well, and then some ground almonds, and that's actually used as a thickening agent, just to kind of give that ice cream a little bit more of a binding agent, really. And then also we're going to be using pistachio nuts, and finally some rose water or orange blossom water, if that's what you have, to actually make the kulfi. So this is a cooked kulfi. It's actually something you need to make on the pan. But before I get started with the actual kulfi, I'm just going to quickly roast up some nuts to get that going. We're going to add some of that to the kulfi, and then a little bit more to garnish as well. And then again, the utensils, pretty straightforward stuff. A heavy base pot so that the milk doesn't scorch at the bottom, really important. And then, a spatula. We don't actually need a blender, so that probably does not need to be on there, unless you wanted to use the blender to grind your nuts. I actually have a hand grinder, which I'll show you as I crank through it. And then just some of the rest, which is measuring cups and a knife and chopping board if you don't want to use a blender, and some popsicle sticks and some paper cups, not plastic. And finally, some aluminum foil to go over the top. So this is the trifecta I was talking about: a tub of evaporated milk. This is the 340 ml, as you can see at the bottom over there. A tin of condensed milk. It's interesting, I actually went in and looked at skim condensed milk, and it actually has more sugar in it.
I noticed that. I did the same.
Yeah. So, if you're trying to be careful about sugar, I would actually go for the regular kind, especially because it's got more creaminess, and that's what we need for this recipe because it is ice cream. So I would err on the regular kind, and then of course double thick cream. So Nancy, I think we had an exchange about over in the US, there's no such thing as double cream. It's a very British thing. Heavy cream being the closest over there. Otherwise, whipping cream with some cornstarch to go in it, just to kind of keep that consistency where it needs to be. So those are the sort of the milk trifectas, if you like. I'm going to go ahead now and switch to the other camera, because we're going to do some roasting of the peanuts, so not peanuts, the pistachio nuts, and the very, very low heat, because I don't want to burn the nuts. I'm going to quickly weigh them so I know how much needs to go in. So I'm doing 50 grams of the pistachio nuts. So I'm just going to switch on the scale and just weigh that up. There we go. Yep, just a bit too much. Can't go wrong, I suppose. You can always throw in more, but let's just follow the recipe to keep it easy and simple for today. Yeah, we go. That should do it. So I'm just going to roast these up. I'm just going to go ahead, and that's starting to get warm. I'm just going to sprinkle that in. And then I think the other thing I needed to weigh was about, well, this one's more for garnish. So I'm actually going to use these sorts of almonds that are already sort of chopped up for you. I'm just going to go ahead and use 20 grams of that. And that'll be for the garnish more so. And I'll do that after I do the pistachios. So the roasting, just as you know, gives a bit of sweetness, gives it a bit of crunch, as opposed to just raw. And this is my hand crank grinder, which I'm going to use in a second to grind the pistachios, because we're going to cook the pistachios in the milk. Some of that color is going to get released. The green is going to kind of come out. And so grinding it actually does help promote that. And that's the reason why I'm grinding it. I suppose if you like whole pistachios, there's absolutely no reason why you can't just throw them in. But I came across pistachio butter the other day, and I was thinking that would be fun to actually add directly in, because that would just be pure pistachio puree mixed in, so very smooth consistency for the kulfi. So you could certainly go ahead and do that. I just swap out, I think I put 50 pistachios, 50 grams of pistachios. You can just use 50 grams of pistachio butter. All right. So we're going to go ahead and throw everything in. I'm going to do the evaporated milk first because it's got the highest liquid content and I don't want anything to get scorched at the bottom. That's just a can of it going straight in. It depends on where it's from. The most prized saffron is from Iran, and probably the next most prized is from Kashmir. And there's Spanish saffron as well, which is good. So I'm not saying that any of them are bad per se, but it's more where it's made from rather than where you buy it from, if that makes sense.
So which one was it was Iran? Was the
Iranian, yeah, from Iran probably is the best in terms of quality, and then followed by Kashmir probably is the next, I would say. Now I love my saffron, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw another pinch in there. Another trick with saffron is if you want to get more color out of it, you just grind it like you would in a mortar and pestle until it's in a powder form, and that really takes out more color. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead with is the condensed milk. So that's just easy peasy, straight in, nice and viscous. And that's why I don't add any sugar to this, obviously, because it's got all the sweetness from there. So really the condensed milk just gives the sweetness. The evaporated milk just gives that sort of milkiness, and then the double cream, the creaminess, all put together beautifully. Yeah, here we go. So that's good. So I'm just going to leave that to warm up. Actually, I might throw the double cream in, and then I'll quickly grind up my pistachios and throw that in as well. But that color is already starting to turn because the saffron's starting to. So you can before making this soak saffron in the evaporated milk. Probably is the best one to soak it in if you wanted to start to pull out that color. But because it's being cooked on a heat, that color comes out even when you make it here. So I wouldn't worry too much if you didn't have a chance to do it, but if you really like saffron and the color that it kind of kicks out, then go ahead and soak it in the evaporated milk for at least a couple of hours before you start to make the kulfi. Really low heat. What's going to happen is this will come to it will rise, and at the point it rises is when you want to drop it down to a low heat and then keep it simmering for about 15 minutes, constantly stirring it. But even to bring it up to that sort of rise, I'm very careful. I get a little, I've had too many incidents where I've scorched cream or fat or milk, and so I get quite nervous when I have to do it, and so I kind of err with caution and just let it come to the rise itself, which it will. So if you wait long enough, it does.
You don't want it to boil, do you?
It will start to boil, and that's the point at which you drop the heat. So, and by boil, I mean that milk froth will start to rise to the top, which I'll show you. So I'm just trying to patiently get it there at the rate it wants to go. Let that warm up and do the pistachio grind. Now it might be worth, that's what I wanted. There we go. So I've just got the pistachios, they've now cooled. So I've let them to, I wouldn't go grinding them straight away, although you could if you like. I prefer not to. I'm just gonna put them in, and I've got this guy here on, there's a little button that says it's fine. There we go. So I've just got it on a fine grind, and I'm just going to go ahead and hand crank it the traditional way, which I think is fun because it kind of gives a little bit of different sizes for the pistachio rather than all of it being quite big. Kind of see it's like almost like the one you would probably get. Kathy at the supermarket that you, so I'm just going to leave that there. I'm going to go ahead and throw it straight in because I want that green to start coming out. So let me just flick that back to hopefully that right camera. Yep, something that needs to cook on a slightly low heat so that it doesn't burn. Looking good. It's starting to froth, which means it's about to rise. You guys can see that. It's just foaming at the top. That means it's come up to the right temperature now. So we get it to simmer for 15 minutes. I'm just going to get that going. I'm just going to go ahead and throw 1 teaspoon of ground cardamom in. And I love my cardamom, so the extra doesn't matter to me. And then the other part that needs to go in as well is the ground almonds. I'm going in with 3 tablespoons of that. Oh, that's lovely. It's just kind of jumped up my nose, the cardamom. So again, the ground almonds is to thicken, and I prefer it to cornstarch for the cooked recipe, because cornstarch is better used when you're not actually warming things up, because cornstarch is ground almond like almond meal? Yes, Susie, same thing. Ground almond meal. So long as it's kind of fine enough for it to disappear, that's perfect. And I think you guys call it almond meal, ground almond over there, whereas we call it almond meal over here, like hazelnut meal. But yeah, cornstarch is tricky. It doesn't dilute in hot water. It dilutes slowly in cold water. So I prefer to use cornstarch in the no cook version, whereas in the cook version, I prefer ground almonds, although I use both in the no cook version. But yeah, it really starts to become more of a faded olive green by the time we're done cooking. And then even once it's done cooking, we have to let it cool, and that thickens further, and the color just keeps releasing, both the saffron and the pistachio. So that's the fun part about it. So there we go. Once we let this sort of sit to cool, in about 8 minutes time, I'll quickly whip up. Again, I thought it was considering you don't have to cook this. All you need is a blender and ingredients to get the sort of the output, if you like, of ice cream. I managed to salvage one to show you guys what it looks like. So I just went because it's really good. So and the other thing is, as I mentioned, to freeze them in small quantities so you can have a little bit of it rather than trying to have a lot of it all at once. And that way you will end up finding that you get through it within the month, so you wouldn't have to worry too much. The other alternative, of course, is to do a half recipe if you don't think you'll get through all of it. That way you don't end up in a situation where you might have something that may have turned in the freezer and you find out in an unpleasant way. Water, let me just leave that there so you can see it. It's basically the flower of a pandan leaf. So the pandan leaf, interestingly enough, the pandan leaf we've come to know the pandan leaf is actually domesticated. It's not natural. The natural version is like a palm tree, and that palm tree has a flower. There's a male and female flower. So this kevra water is the male flower of a pandan plant, and that is like pandan but more floral. So it's kind of like, think of it between kind of like saffron and pandan leaf, is what this is, and that's what I'll be adding. So I'll be adding 2 teaspoons of the water, not the essence. The essence is more concentrated, so I use 1 teaspoon if you had essence of rose or orange blossom or kevra, but I'm using 2 because I've got the water. So that's what I'll be adding. That's probably the most traditional version of essence to add, or water to add, followed by rose and then orange blossom. So yeah, it's gonna kind of drop it in, and that's the spoon. And what we want to do is pull it straight down, and we don't want it, if I'm moving it left and right, as you can see, it's not dripping over. It's holding its spot, which means it's got the custard texture or custard consistency, which means it's ready and it's delicious. And then cook it until 15 minutes roughly, or the custard test is done. And then 2 teaspoons of the kevra essence, kevra water, or 1 teaspoon of the essence. Ooh, it's jumping around. So yep, and just kind of keep stirring it occasionally, because it's just going to help the heat come out of the mix. Probably until it reaches room temperature. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to do the mango kulfi in a second. I'm going to wait for it to become cooler, not completely cold, but cooler at least, and then start to pour it into the cups. And then they can come to a complete cool in the cups, because they'll actually, because they're separated, it'll cool down faster as well. So I'm just going to let this sit on the side now that we're done with it, and come back to it when we're ready to cup it. Put these guys away. Were there any questions on that? And we'll come back to cupping, putting it in the mold rather. That's probably the better way to say it. Yes. And it is 15 minutes roughly to kind of simmer it. And then you do the custard test and keep going if it's not there yet. Up our pistachio kulfi, which you can hopefully see. So can you see how that's really started to come to a cool? And it's a lot more liquidy than the other one, because it will continue to thicken. It's still quite warm at the moment. The pot's still quite, it's warm, it's cool to the touch, but it's warm. And once I start to pour them into the cups, they're going to further decrease in temperature and further thicken as well. But already you can see that that's probably thicker than it was when we were cooking it before. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab me another set. And we are going. Is everyone having fun making ice cream this close to summer, at least on this side of the hemisphere? Just going to try and pour these in as best I can. And for these ones, because they've got pistachio in them already, I'm not going to add the garnish, although the one I'll pull out from the freezer probably will have some garnish in it. And I won't cover these up the way I did the ones before, just because I need it to continue to cool. And I don't think that covering it up is going to help promote that, probably slow it down. Out of it. So those are the Kulfi cups, and you just saw me hit it like that. So the reason for that is because I want all that air bubbles and steam to come to the top, and I'll keep doing that until they come to a complete cool. And at that point, it'll probably be pretty thick, and so on and so on and so forth. I could keep doing that. Those pop up as soon as you tap it, they go away. And as more rise up, you just keep tapping it until it goes away. But yeah, if you want the creamy, icy effect, then disregard all of that. Just put it straight in the freezer. All right, so I'm just heading into the freezer now to grab myself one of each. So we've got from when I made them last. I'm not the best at doing these. So that's a Kulfi one, at least a couple of minutes outside the fridge before I'm able to kind of pull it out. The other alternative is to tear it. So let's have a bit of fun today and do that together and see how that comes out. So I try to go at it with a scissors so that, and I do it on an angle so that hopefully that angle holds and I'm able to kind of keep tearing it. Fingers crossed. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. All right. That was a success. Look at that. So this is absolutely, so that's just me pulling out the top, and hopefully you can see that come through. So it's got some rose, some pistachio at the bottom, and it's just all the way around smooth. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that on a plate so you guys can take a look at it nice and close. So this is what I've got is on the right, pistachio butter. On the left, almond butter, because those are the things that are in there. And the only other thing I have is some slivered almonds. Just gonna kind of put that all over. And this is saffron infused evaporated milk. So it's a little bit of a drizzle of that. And there you go. It just popped saffron. Is that all done? So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you very soon.